Hey everyone, thanks again for clicking play and making it this far. This is part 2 of my video podcast series on Steven Pressfield's The War of Art. Today we are going pro and invoking the Muse. And if that's complete gibberish to you, then definitely go back and watch episode 1 before continuing on with this video. So on this episode, we will cover what Pressfield means when he says going pro, and then we will cover 3 attributes that a true professional embodies: maintaining order, self-validating, and acting in the face of fear. And to finish the episode, we will discover the ever-mysterious Muse. So what does Pressfield mean when he says going pro? Well, he doesn't mean it in the literal sense, like gaining your professional credentials to become a lawyer. He describes it as an ideal. For example, when you compare the amateur and the professional, he's describing the level of commitment, the work output, and how the pro will not give in to resistance like the amateur. The best way to describe this is, if you have a vocation, a job, which most of us do or did, and you do well at that job, in so many ways you embody what it means to be a pro. You get up early, you show up on time, you stay late, you exude passion for the work, and most of all, you get the work done. Now the distinction is too many of us cannot seem to carry that kind of commitment over to any other endeavor in life. Imagine putting forth the level of effort to working on that six-pack the same way you exert yourself to hit your sales quota. Many of us don't because we let resistance win. I know I do. So now I'll cover a few pro attributes from Pressfield that really resonated with me. When I lived in the back of my Chevy van, I had to dig my typewriter out from beneath layers of tire tools, dirty laundry, and moldering paperbacks. My truck was a nest, a hive, a hellhole on wheels. The professional cannot live like that. He is on a mission. He will not tolerate disorder. He eliminates chaos from his world in order to banish it from his mind. He wants the carpet vacuumed and the threshold swept, so the Muse may enter and not soil her gown. So stay tuned for the final section of the episode where I cover his last sentence where he mentions the Muse. Why this one resonated with me mostly was its parallel with an idea and an individual who I've taken a lot of inspiration from, in Jordan Peterson. Peterson was a huge advocate of cleaning your room, and for a while it became a viral meme. So what Peterson and Pressfield are saying here is the pro doesn't live in a disordered world, in both the literal and figurative sense. It's proven that excessive mess or clutter in your living space lead to unhealthy levels of cortisol, which essentially means you're stressing yourself out. So finding your muse, your inspiration to get work done when your immediate world is messy and cluttered, won't work. The most raw example I can think of to explain this is the military, and why the military is what it is. They drill into you the necessity for orderliness. This is much deeper than the superficial notion that it's to strip you down of dignity, individuality, and make you a part of a big machine. Military strategists know that the orderly mind is sharper, more creative, more individual, more capable of making those split-second decisions, and in a combat situation, that could be the difference between life and death. Contrary to some opinions out there, the military in many ways wants to instill in you the ability to think as an individual among the collective, not the other way around. Jocko Willink, author of Extreme Ownership, says discipline equals freedom. The surefire way to feeling a sense of autonomy in this world is to maintain a commitment to discipline so you can fashion the world around you, not have it control you. An amateur lets the negative opinion of others unman him. He takes external criticism to heart, allowing it to trump his own belief in himself and his work. Resistance loves this. The professional learns to recognize envy-driven criticism and to take it for what it is, the supreme compliment. The critic hates most that which he would have done himself if he had had the guts. I love this because it terrifies me. I go to bed thinking of others. I am actively possessed by this form of resistance. Most things I do, contrary to what others may have known about me, especially my previous jobs, are highly influenced by external criticism. I measure up against others, I let the critical thoughts in, and the times I'm able to self-validate and not let others influence my thought process is rare. It's something I'm really working on. These videos are a way for me to do that. Get the work done and get it out there. And screw what the critics think. So social media. One of social media's foundational strategies, and this is admitted by all the people who design the Facebooks and Instagrams of the world, is to draw the user in by exploiting the vulnerability within us that we all have. And that is caring deeply about what other people say and do. When we are validated by others, it's the immediate short-term reward, and like a drug, we constantly seek the next hit. That's the reason I had to deactivate my personal Facebook and Instagram several years ago. I became a person I didn't like on those platforms. Each post was an ego-driven attempt at external validation. I fully admit, I couldn't handle the strain those platforms caused me. For many, they're just nice ways to connect with others, and this sort of thing is irrelevant to them. It wasn't for me. The amateur believes he must first overcome his fear, then he can do his work. The professional knows that fear can never be overcome. He knows there is no such thing as a fearless warrior or a dread-free artist. Mike Tyson, former boxing heavyweight champion of the world, would say before every bout he was supremely confident and scared to death. George St. Pierre, former UFC welterweight and middleweight champion, described wishing the lights would turn off in the arena before walking out to the cage because he was so scared. These are men who at one point were at the pinnacle of their art. Untouched, undisputed, and without question were considered the greatest in their class. I take a lot of comfort in knowing that two of combat sport's most revered artists also felt that disarming feeling of fear. A year ago, I competed in my first Jiu Jitsu tournament. I entered the tournament a complete amateur in many ways. I had let sickness, my job, and many other aspects of resistance stop me from being the best Jiu Jitsu practitioner on the day of competition. They were all excuses, driven by self-sabotage. The following is footage from that tournament. I ran through my first opponent, securing a submission, got my hand raised, and then proceeded to be handled by my next four opponents. I got a draw in my second match despite being overpowered and outmaneuvered by a very strong opponent. But then I lost my last three by tap out. I was underprepared and underconditioned. I felt my muscles fatigued to the point of exhaustion halfway through the second match, with 3 still to go. I couldn't even make a fist after the second match because my hands and fingers were so tired from over-gripping and overstraining my muscles, a common attribute of the amateur jiu-jitsu player. I was physically beaten. Fatigue truly made a coward of me. But there was one thing I could take away from this experience. I was terrified every moment leading up to the first match. I was scared in between matches, looking at my next opponent when I saw his lack of fatigue versus my own. I was scared when I would go to bed at night thinking about the tournament. But once that day came and I finished my last match, I walked out of the building to my car and thought, I showed up, I competed, and I didn't let myself down. I worked with the fear versus trying to suppress it or let it stop me from competing in the first place. Despite the result, I was still content I had managed at least this. So to round it back to Pressfield's point, you may never overcome fear. Many career entertainers, musicians, artists said that even after a 40-plus year career, that before performances, they would be vomiting from fear. The fear is always going to be there. The pro negotiates that territory without letting it defeat him. Why have I stressed professionalism so heavily in the preceding chapters? because the most important thing about art is to work. Nothing else matters except sitting down every day and trying. Why is this important? Because when we sit down day after day and keep grinding, something mysterious starts to happen. A process is set into motion by which inevitably and infallibly heaven comes to our aid. Unseen forces enlist in our cause. Serendipity reinforces our purpose. The final theme of the War of Art is the abstract notion of the Muse. Pressfield describes how resistance is a force for evil in our lives. Like any good writer, he sets this up perfectly to introduce the force for good to help defeat the enemy of resistance. Any of us who have ever felt the feeling of truly getting to work and actually turning pro in any single aspect of our lives knows that there is a phenomenon that occurs where it seems everything starts to come into alignment and new opportunities present themselves. You have called into being something to allow your creativity and your work output to flourish. While the forces of resistance are always there, ready to pounce, you have transcended onto a higher plane, and the previous felt notions of resistance are beneath you. Pressfield calls this otherworldly feeling the Muse. He describes how the true greats from Beethoven to Stevie Wonder all identified something greater than themselves when identifying the source of their art. Most important point here. There is no muse without the work. To invoke the muse, you have to get to work. No inspired work was ever produced while sitting on the couch, eating chips, and watching reality TV. Okay, that wraps up parts 1 and 2 for the War of Art. Thank you so much for watching. This was my first attempt at getting some interesting content out there, breaking through my own blocks of resistance. If there's only one person out there who took some inspiration from these videos, then I'm happy. If you are one of those people, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave some thoughts. I plan on doing some interesting things with the channel, so you have a lot to look forward to. Thanks again so much for watching.